Hi everyone! Welcome to Cosmologies, the channel where science meets spirit in our quest to learn more about our universe and the human experience. I'm your host, Natalie, and today we're covering a very special event in our sky, the great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn on this upcoming winter solstice. Let's go! What were you doing 19 and a half years ago? For reference, that would be the late spring of the year 2000. I was learning multiplication and how to ride a bike, but others may remember the Gore versus Bush election, the dot-com bubble burst, or not being born yet. Sorry. It was definitely a different world, and it was also the last time that we had a grand conjunction. To learn more about what that is, let's jump into the planetarium. All of the planets in our solar system orbit our sun. So if you want, you can think of them as cars in a gigantic cosmic racetrack. And occasionally, one race car will pass another one. But remember, the Earth is also one of those race cars, and it's also moving, so it has a different perspective than any other car. A conjunction is what happens when one of those cars appears to pass another one from our point of view. So whether or not one is actually lapping the other, we can see a crossing in our actual sky. Usually these cars are planets, but conjunctions can also occur between the moon, the sun, and occasionally spacecraft. And in general, they happen fairly often. Today, we're talking about the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. So what makes this conjunction so grand? Let's look again. Saturn and Jupiter are farther away from the sun than Earth is, so imagine they're on outer racetracks. This means that they have farther to go to complete one orbit, and it takes them a much longer time than it takes us. So, one full orbit, or a year, on Jupiter lasts 11.86 Earth years, and a year on Saturn lasts 29.5 Earth years. And if we count the orbits the Earth makes in the time it takes for Jupiter to lap Saturn, we find it's about 19.6. That's 19.6 years. It is a long freaking time. And in terms of visible conjunctions, it's actually the longest time. See, Uranus and Neptune take even longer to orbit, but they are really far away. So far that ancient astronomers without telescopes couldn't really see them. So for a long time, Saturn and Jupiter were the slowest visible planets, which makes their conjunction the most rare. That's why this is called a great or grand conjunction, or sometimes a grand chronicator or time marker. This particular conjunction is even more rare because it's closer than it's been in nearly 400 years, in 1623. But remember, it's all about appearances and perspective. So when I say closer, I don't mean that the planets are physically close to each other or even physically closer to us, although there are a lot of times when that information is relevant. No, what I mean is that from our perspective, they appear closer together in our sky. You may be familiar with latitude and longitude as imaginary lines on the Earth. Now imagine those lines are projected into the sky and you have a grid that astronomers use to track objects. If we draw a line from one visible horizon to the other, we get 180 degrees or a semicircle, and astronomers divide each degree into 60 minutes. These planets are going to pass within 0 degrees and 6 minutes of each other. That's so close that some folks won't even be able to tell that they're actually two different planets and not just one ultra-bright star without a telescope. So, what's the upshot of all this? Well, it's pretty darn cool. But this channel is called Cosmologies, not just Astronomies, so we're going to turn to astrology for a different perspective on this event. This is something that we'll probably talk a lot about on this channel, so I want to make a few things very clear. A long time ago, astronomy and astrology were basically the same thing. People were just looking at the stars, making observations, and figuring stuff out. Then, over time, schools diverged. astronomy into an empirical science, and astrology as the clearinghouse for stories, archetypes, divinatory arts, and other Gnosticism that didn't quite fit in the same branch anymore. Astronomy is also one of the oldest sciences known to virtually all people, so there are many different types of astrology around the world. I don't consider myself to be an astrologer, but I do know some people who do. So the background on this next section comes from an interview with astrologer Doc McDowell, which is also posted on this channel. In classic astrology, Jupiter usually represents expansiveness and growth, which is fitting for a planet so large that it accounts for 99% of the matter in our solar system that isn't the sun. The Roman god Jupiter is based on the Greek king of the gods, Zeus, so this planet is seen as an indicator of abundance, fortune, and general success. It's known as the Great Benefic. Saturn usually represents structures and limits, and can also represent time, death, harvest, and more. The Roman god Saturn is based on Greek Titan dad Cronus, who ruled over a golden age of harmony until he ate his children and was bested by his son Zeus. Throughout antiquity, Cronus is conflated with Kronos, the personification of time, and whether this is accidental or, as Plutarch suggests, a purposeful allegory, Saturn now means many things, but is known as the Great Malefic. Bringing the Great Benefic and Great Malefic together might seem like quite a clash. But like yin and yang, Saturn can ground and give structure to the fruitful energy of Jupiter, and Jupiter can fill the spaces that Saturn creates. And with Saturn's endings and Jupiter's beginnings, it's usually seen as the liminal doorway to a new cycle. As you might imagine, a close conjunction like this one is said to magnify these effects. Astrologers also look at the zodiac sign that the conjunction occurs in to interpret its meaning, and this depends on which astrology system you use. Technically, the constellation Capricornus is the backdrop for this conjunction, so sidereal astrologers say it takes place in Capricorn, but most Western astrologers use tropical astrology and say it's in Aquarius. Don't worry if you still have questions about this. We don't have time to go into this today, but we definitely will in a later episode. To learn more about the interpretations of this conjunction in Capricorn or Aquarius, close conjunctions in semi-recent history, and what this could mean for us, I highly encourage you to check out my interview with Doc McDowell. It's real good. So, how and when can you see this conjunction? Well, you can kind of start to see it already. In fact, as I film this, their moon systems are already conjuncting, but the official conjunction takes place on December 21st. This is already a really important day in astronomy because it's the northern winter solstice and the southern summer solstice. The fact that this conjunction takes place within 3 hours of the solar new year is not lost upon astrologers, and many believe that this also strengthens its new beginning aspect. For the best viewing, head out just after sunset on December 20th or 21st. Technically, the conjunction occurs at 13:30 Universal Time on the 21st, so if you live in the UAE, you'll have the best possible view. However, it will be 5 a.m. here in Seattle on the opposite side of the world. But honestly, both evenings will also have a pretty good show. Optimal viewing is about an hour after sunset. Too early and it will be too bright, too late, and they will have already set. The planets are just 30 degrees away from the sun, which is pretty close and means that they'll set pretty early. To measure 30 degrees, make a hang loose sign with one hand and just add 3 fingers onto the other. Put that up to the sky. 30 degrees. The planets also travel along the same imaginary line as our sun called the ecliptic, so you may want to watch the sunset because it will show you where to look. If you're in the chilly northern hemisphere, the sun will be at its southernmost point and its steepest angle to the earth, so you'll need to look southwest. Folks in the warm southern hemisphere will need to look northwest, and folks on the equator are actually the luckiest here. The planets will set directly, exactly, perpendicularly west for them, so they'll be the easiest to see there. This view is from my hometown in Seattle, where the sun will set at 4:20 p.m. around true southwest. However, for accurate sunset locations and times in your area, I recommend timeanddate.com. And I highly encourage downloading an app like Stellarium, which uses GPS to show your sky accurately. If you can, bring binoculars, just in case you're one of the many people who won't be able to distinguish between the two planets. And also because sometimes you can see Jupiter's moons really well and Saturn's rings, and they're just really cool to look at. And finally, if you're unable to see the conjunction due to weather, don't worry about it. Remember, they're traveling really slowly, so they'll be at it for a while. We've talked very briefly about the solstice, and I would love to do a deep dive into that because it's one of my favorite topics, but seasons happen on the regular, and conjunctions like this are pretty rare, so we'll have to do a big solstice episode in the future. In the meantime, I want to do a quick shout out to everyone celebrating anything this season because statistically, there's a good chance that you do. I like to say that axial tilt is the reason for the season, but regardless of what you celebrate, be it light, a miracle, a birthday, a magical visit, some time off of work, or even snow sports, celebrations will definitely look a little different this year. I think it's important to recognize that traditionally we have these celebrations now because winter is hard. It's a time of surviving, not necessarily thriving, and people are more susceptible to famine, isolation, and disease. And I think this year a lot of us are really feeling that in a way we might never have felt before. I just wanted to remind you in these literal darkest days that the solstice for many is a beacon of hope. Because even as we go into the coldest season, we can see the days starting to get longer and brighter. And at the very least, many of us can be thankful that we have not experienced such extremes in every winter of our lives, as many of our ancestors probably did. All right, let's wrap it up. I hope you enjoyed this very first episode of Cosmologies, and I'm so excited for you to check out Doc's interview, also posted on this page. Next month, we are talking all about lunar calendars, and our special interview will be about the Chinese Lunar New Year. And if you have any other intersections of science and the human experience that you would like to explore, please be sure to leave those in the comments. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe, and most importantly, more important than any of that, please share with people that you think would like this. And if I said something that you disagree with, awesome. Please reach out and educate me. This month's Planetarium content is brought to you by Kyle Doan of Nomad Domes using a Digitalis skybox. This month's guest contributor is Doc McDowell, and the Cosmologies theme song was written and performed by Aaron J. Shea. Thanks for watching Cosmologies. See you next month and stay wonderful.